Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Any further discussion? Anybody not in favor? Thumbs down. Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward, 8.5, bylaw 5140, board discussion, vote on committee report qualifier increases. Rhonda, and then Adam might chime in.
Yes, this was in response to an email that Ernie forwarded to the board, and we wanted to make sure that we were following bylaw procedures in terms of the role of the board in increasing qualifiers. So I sent a response to everyone, and I will turn it over to Adam. This will take an action item from the board to support the football report that has already been submitted to the Legislative Council. So I'll turn it over to Adam.
And if you have any other questions, let me know.
Thanks, Rhonda. So a couple of things in kind of how this decision came about with the football committee. And this is the discussion on having all of our classifications, not simply 4A and 5A, go to 24 qualifiers. Our percentage of teams that qualify for the postseason football is 40.7%. If you were to go through and look at the kind of the states around us, one of the things that I heard over and over again during wrestling was how great Kansas and Nebraska were doing things, and we needed a model after them. So I figured let's go ahead and take a look at what it is they do. Since they're somebody I was told to use as a model, I decided to use them as a model. So when I go through and I start looking, Kansas has 80% of their schools make the postseason. South Dakota, if I start looking around the area around us, South Dakota 65%, Arkansas 60%, Wyoming 60%, New Mexico 55%, Montana 55%, Nebraska 52%, Oklahoma 50%, and we're 40%. So we're below all the states around us. And so we propose increasing that number. The proposal when it came out is if we were going to have our 6A idea pass through, it would jump us to 67%, which would put us right there, essentially equal with South Dakota. If that did not pass and we stay with 5A, it would be at 57%, which would put us right in the middle of all the states around us. The other piece that I went through with that when I did that research originally was also on the idea of who of those states host their championships at neutral sites. Again, that's not for this conversation, but it was interesting to see that all but 2 host all their games at neutral sites. One of the ideas that I know came about and there was talk about was if we add these games, it's just going to add more blowouts to the teams that qualify for that. So we dug a little deeper into that data. 5A has used the round of 24 for 2 years. In 2019, in that 17 through 24 seeds, there was 1 upset. The average margin of victory in that round was 18 points. The record of the 17 through 24 seeds was 31-49, so they had a losing record. But then when you go to quarterfinals, the next round, the average margin of victory was 21.5. So our games are actually closer in that round of 24 than they were in the quarterfinals. 2018, the same thing held true. There were 2 upsets. Average margin of victory that year was 18 in the round of 24. The record of those teams was 44-37, so they had winning records. The winning record versus losing record didn't change what the margin of victory was. The quarterfinal average margin of victory that year was 32.5 points. So 2 touchdowns greater than what it was the round before. So when I look at that data and I take that and I compare it down to the rest of our classifications, if 18 for 2 years in a row in that round of 24 was the average margin of victory, 4A quarterfinal averages were 19.5 and 19 3/8. 3A quarterfinals were 27.5 and 24. 2A quarterfinals were 26 and 17. 1A quarterfinals were 21 and 1/8 both times. So when we go through and we look and we see that adding that round is going to add more blowouts, the data suggests that actually are closer games than what the quarterfinals are going to be the following week. And so when it really boiled down to was we wanted to create opportunities for our teams. Yes, there are 8 teams that will have to travel that wouldn't have necessarily traveled because they wouldn't have been in. But we also, again, wanted to create opportunities. And the kind of the story I would use and how I'd paint the picture is if you're at a college playing football and you get an opportunity to go to a bowl game, It's not that you're super excited to get a t-shirt and a trophy because you got to go to the Cheez-It Bowl. There's no, you don't save a space in your trophy case for the Cheez-It Bowl or the Motel 6 Cactus Bowl. That's not what that's about. It's about the extra week of practice, and it's about the marketing and the recruiting. And for us, that'd be recruiting the hallways and getting more people excited about your program. We have a lot of schools and a lot of programs that are struggling, and there's not going to be a magic fix with a magic coach with a magic playbook that's going to come in and fix what their program is. But if we can give them some potential to see some success, to play an extra week, there's also a greater number of teams that when they get to week 6 or 7, that right now they know their season is done, they've still got something to fight for because there's still a chance to get in and keep playing. So we're able to keep those kids tuned in with their coach even longer. And that's really what this came about, was how do we provide opportunities? And essentially, why does 4A and 5A have the opportunity, but 3A and below doesn't? And so that was one of the things we set out to do, was to also make it equitable for all of our size schools. Not simply if you go to a large 5A or 4A school, to 24 if you get in, but if you go to a 3A school or smaller, only 16. So we try to set that out to make it equal for all schools, so all kids get that opportunity to go in and compete. And that's really what it boiled down to. And so the data kind of suggested that we're behind in some of those things. And so we looked at how can we create a program that gives all of our schools an opportunity, and that's what we came up with.
So Adam, I would thank you for taking the time to go through and look at all that data that you looked at. I guess I'm going to speak against this on a couple different reasons. One, we still have that bylaw where, committee did not come to the board of directors ahead of time to ask to increase playoff consideration. Here's some of the things that I will counter with what Adam's talking about. Though that first round in 5A, the 17 through, or not 9 through 24 round, that margin of victory may be closer. I think that more points to the fact that when you're 9 to 24, you're probably more on par with each other than you are if you are 9 to 16 compared to 1 through 8. Okay, so I didn't share, I don't think, with this particular board, but it's in the data that I came up with is in the board packet around, I think it's CR2F, I believe. And when you start looking at 2019 data and the number of teams with losing records that would qualify for the playoffs, if we increase to 24, it's significant. And if the 6A football proposal actually passes, that even adds more to it, including teams in one case, a winless team making the playoffs, more than a handful of 1-win teams making the playoffs, and significant numbers of 2- and 3-win teams making the playoffs. I would say that we're not really rewarding anybody. We're prolonging agony. If I'm a 2-8 team, a 2-7 team, and I have to, and I qualified for the playoffs, and now I have the opportunity to go down to Rifle or TCA or somewhere else to have a running clock put on me by the time that we get to halftime. I get it that the average margin of victory is around 20. But that's the average. That means there's going to be some close games and there's going to be some that are blowouts. Okay, so though I respect the fact that several other states are dealing with higher numbers of percentages of people that are in the playoffs, I would submit that we are unique in what we have here as far as geography is concerned, and the makeup of our association. And what works in Nebraska and works in South Dakota might not work for Colorado. I would also say that, when you start talking about it at the lower levels, I get it for some of the bigger levels and bigger schools. But when we start withholding some of our athletes from our small schools for an extra week, that's time that those kids are not now playing winter sports, and we've talked about it, and we talked about it at length, and our office has done a lot of different things this year to protect the fact that we want to have our multi-sport athletes be able to be true to their season, and adding an extra week of playoffs for teams that are predominantly losing teams goes against the spirit of what we're trying to do. So that's where I'm at. So though I truly appreciate Adam, and for the most part agree with everything that he does, in this particular instance, I'm going to have to disagree with what he and the committee are proposing. So, and that's my personal opinion.
If I understand correctly, what we decide today will impact what gets presented tomorrow at Legislative Council. Is that correct?
And again, I'm going to go with all due respect about this bylaw brought to our attention in such a short period of time, and wanting to be fair to everyone in every committee report. We didn't address this last year. The only reason why Adam is in front of you based on this bylaw is because his report was the only one that increased qualifiers. And so technically you could have every one of our administrative assistants, and I'm sorry, assistant commissioners in front of you if this had occurred last year and this bylaw was brought to you. So in fairness, Adam is representative of his committee and their wishes. I think both sides have brought good arguments to the table, but the end result is that we have to come up with a vote today to either move the qualifiers forward, or if you decide not to move the qualifiers forward, then through parliamentary procedure, that report is in the ownership of the Legislative Council, and we will have to determine how to delete that from the committee report. But we will address bylaw 5140 today. Again, I'll leave it at that. So anything, Bert, our parliamentarian, that I need corrected on, please feel free to step in.
Nope, Rhonda, you had it. If the board does not approve it, then we have to figure out how we're going to remove it from the report.
Just to clarify, we're just looking at whether we agree with this or not. We're not looking at the bylaw or was this shouldn't be included because we didn't follow the bylaws, correct?
No, this is just following the process that the bylaw established.
And it's only in regards to the board moving forward. So we need to make this clear. Moving forward, any committee that determines that they will increase their qualifiers, they can have their committee report, and the assistant commissioner can come before you and share what that end result is to increase qualifiers. But before it goes to the Legislative Council moving forward, this body, unless we change that bylaw for the following year, this body will have to approve any increases in committee report, in any qualifiers through a committee report. And today we don't get to determine what that bylaw is. And obviously our policy meeting is tomorrow. So the time that this would even impact, we have to go through another year of this body overseeing additional qualifiers for committee reports, unless we change that bylaw for the 2022 start of the policy year.
I'll speak on behalf of my district because I know I heard from them when this came up. And full disclosure, I'm on the football committee. So when this came up in front of my district, I heard from District 1 pretty loud and clear that they would not support additional qualifiers for football due to, I think, some of the facts that or some of the reasons that Ernie stated, as well as also, I think, a big concern for them is the cost of additional cost coming back from COVID, adding qualifiers, and the substantial transportation bills that our schools have to face. Even though geography is taken into consideration, I think it's one more bill that they have to look at in the scope of things that they're against it, not only in football, but I would say in every sport. So that's definitely where District 1 would fall.
For clarification, this would not be for this coming fall. It would be for the following year.
Thank you. their concerns would still be the same.
Just want to go on record and say that I'm not a fan of increasing qualifiers for the reasons of participation and giving more opportunities. While I understand what you're saying, Adam, that no coach comes in with a magic formula, from a competitive point of view, like as athletic directors and as schools, like you need to hire the people and build the programs that can be competitive. And if you can't build a competitive program, then maybe you need to be a school without a program and allow your students to go play that sport somewhere else. I'm not in favor of this type of move. To me, it just comes down to, at some point, everybody gets a trophy, and I don't think that's really what this is about. If we're truly about educationally based athletics, then I think there's a lesson to be learned there by everyone that making moves like this do not support that mission.
So the question I have here is, is because this is already in the report, it's already been discussed, right, at a lot of leagues. And I know there were people, planning to speak to it tomorrow and make motions. The idea, is the idea that we decide this here, or is the idea that this gets sent to the legislative council to decide? Because it was, this is kind of our first test, and it was such a late, it was after the committee that we found this bylaw about the board approving additional qualifiers. So, is it best for us to try to decide this issue in here and vote? Is it best for us to let the legislative council, because I know there's several leagues that have proposals around this, and I'm sure we'll discuss it tomorrow.
Nate, I think you bring up a good point, but I want to remind everybody what we talked about at the very beginning of the year, and Rhonda talked about it fairly well about we don't get to choose which bylaws we follow, right? If a bylaw exists and we're aware of the bylaw, we should follow that bylaw, and if we don't like it, we should change that bylaw. So from that aspect, I don't think we have any choice but to determine whether we want to recommend this and approve it as it moves forward, or, not approve it and we pull it off the table.
I hear that, Ernie. At the same time, I think we can still say we are following the bylaw. It's just in the 11th hour, because if Adam is a representative of the committee, then he is technically before us asking for our approval. And so in my mind, I feel like the bylaw is satisfied. We just need to discuss timelines with future committees in future years. I think that's kind of the issue of how that bylaw needs to be applied. In this case, I'm hearing both sides of the story. I have struggled with the number of teams qualify, because I've sent teams to postseason that had losing records, and it didn't make sense to me, but it's unwired. Meanwhile, the kids kind of liked it. They got beat. It wasn't terrible, but it was an experience. And so part of me does think I have no problem with this going forward in terms of it has satisfied the bylaw. I also think, because I think kind of to Nate's point, it has been discussed amongst leagues, other committees, and so on and so forth. I think we're to a point where it's okay to let the membership make the decision on this and let the will of the members vote. Because if you ask me to pick a side one way or another right now, I need time to sleep on it. But everybody else has really dug in, and they know exactly where they want to go. And so I would support moving it forward.
And Caleb, understand, I'm not trying to say that we should be either for or against this. What I'm saying is we need to make a decision as to whether we're moving forward or not.
Right. Yeah. Which, and so to that, strictly speaking to that, I feel it's satisfied. I feel like Adam here presenting it to us does qualify.
I would agree.
All right. So, this is an action item. So we have a motion. 8.5, the language is in your packet. 5140, limit on playoff qualifier increases. that any such increases will be determined and approved at the request of Chess Board of Directors. This would be starting in 2022.
So moved, Troy.
Okay, motion made by Caleb Coates. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Don Steiner. I guess it'd be appropriate to just do a roll call vote. Kathy, are you prepared to do a roll call?
Can we, for the sake of the record, can we have that read again? I know
Sure.
I heard 8.5, Troy, but I'm having a hard time when my computer kind of went.
You bet.
I can't find what that is.
Yes, so 5140, limit on playoff qualifier increases. Before any committee recommendation for increased playoff qualifiers, travel expansion, or missed school time can be proposed, a need must be determined, approved, and requested by the CHSA Board of Directors.
Okay, so what's the motion then, I guess? What's the motion that we put forward? Caleb, since it was your motion?
Actually, yeah, I'm probably going to amend, just to make sure I'm clear on that before I do. When we say requests, what is the board exactly requesting? Are we requesting the legislative council just consider the committee report, or are we, I'm seeing, okay, great. In that case, right. And so, I don't have the language in front of me, but I make the motion that the board of directors approve and request the legislative council consider the committee report for football. Is that sufficient?
Don, are you still good with that as a second?
Yes, I will second that.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Caleb Coates,
Sorry, that was a yes.
Ernie Derrera,
No.
Luke DeWolf,
No.
Wendy Dunaway,
Yes.
Jeff Durbin,
Yes.
Tony Exum. I don't know if he's on yet.
He's not on.
Okay. Richard Hargrove,
Yes.
Michael Hawks,
No.
Steve Longwell.
Steve had to leave for another meeting.
Okay. Brett McClendon,
Yes.
Wendy P,
Yes.
Nate Smith,
Yes.
Don Steiner,
Yes.
Gabe Trujillo,
Yes.
Tarita Walker,
See, Trita.
okay, and Ryan West.
Yes.
And Troy, you don't vote unless there's a tie, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So am I correct, or 2 noes?
Three no's.
3? Okay, okay.
And
Thank you.
Troy, I believe you should still vote as long as you're just the sole representative of your district.
I am not, I mean, I guess I am, but not, yeah. My district is represented by Brett.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries. All right, 8.6, CHSA Tournament Advisory Committee update. Luke.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try and keep this pretty short, but we were able to meet. I met with a pretty diverse group, classification wise and geographically, from across the state. We talked about capturing tournaments, how CHSA captures state tournaments, and then also how those tournaments are subsequently seeded. And really just had a conversation about what that looks like, pursuing on the guidance that we received from the board in the last meeting. We talked a little bit, talked about the history of RPI and kind of how we had gotten to this point. We talked about the current use of RPI and the seeding criteria, kind of the positives and negatives of RPI as we saw them. And then really kind of moved into some guiding questions. The first guiding question that we talked about was, should there be universal criteria to capture the Shasta State tournaments? And overwhelmingly, and we discussed this for quite a bit, but overwhelmingly, the conclusion to that was yes, that there should be a universal criteria to capture those tournaments. As we discussed that, I think, and this, understand that we weren't trying to get to necessarily like, here's the solution, because this is an unsolvable problem. And I think we all kind of came to the consensus that in probably a few years, this discussion will rise up again. But for now, the time being, it seems pertinent to be able to have this conversation as sport committees have started to look at maybe moving away from RPI or different things that they could do. So anyways, really what we looked at as a universal criteria, the conversation we had was really the value in either RPI or max preps. In both of those, there's pluses and minuses. RPI, the big plus is that it's transparent and you know exactly what that number is that's spit out at the end of the day. That can be good or bad. The max prep side of it is that nobody knows how they reach that number that's spit out at the end of the day. And that has positives and negatives as well. So we discussed kind of that. And maybe there's a way between the two that you could use both of those. We had that discussion, but really we settled around RPI and max preps. Packard, we looked at as really repetitive towards some of the systems that we already use. And also there's a fear that was discussed that when Packard retires, the Packard's going to be gone and we'll have, that'll be kind of void and nil anyways. There was strong feelings about the coaches poll being not a part of capturing state tournaments moving forward. And that was unanimous throughout the committee. And I would say we talked about it, but at the end of the day, that's where we ended. The next kind of guided question that we talked about was, we talked a little bit about automatic qualifiers and should those be a part of a system moving forward. The consensus there was that yes, automatic qualifiers definitely have value. They add diversity to our state tournaments. In the same breath, those automatic qualifiers have maybe gotten a little bit out of control and maybe need to be reined in so there's not quite as many automatic qualifiers as there currently is. That was kind of the main conversation about tournament capture. And feel free, Ernie was on the committee with me. Ernie, you can chime in at any point. But that was kind of the main points there. Next, we talked about seeding state tournaments. And the first guiding question that we talked about was, should there be a universal criteria to seed Shasta State tournaments? The feeling there is that yes, there should be probably some universal criteria to seed those state tournaments. And to not have the seeding be a byproduct of the whims of a committee. And there is a possibility, I think, of maybe outlining what those criteria would be or limiting those criteria. But the criteria, again, that we talked about were probably more than any others, RPI and max preps being the ones to use to seed those state tournaments. Again, strong feelings towards probably not using a coaches poll in the seeding of those state tournaments and kind of what that leads to and how in the past maybe that's led to just favoritism or groups of people kind of manipulating that system, and also just the logistics of using a coaching poll system, the problems that's created within CHSA. The final question that we kind of focused on was, if we're considering changes, what is the best way to get feedback and communicate this information to the CHSA membership? And we all felt, I think, as much as anything, that at the end of the day is probably the most important thing moving forward, is how do we, now that we've kind of initiated this discussion, how do we move it out to the membership and continue to have a conversation, allow people to feel like they have a voice, allow people to have some buy-in moving forward? Because as you remember, RPI was was a board policy that was basically kind of put onto the membership. And I think that kind of started maybe some bad feelings around RPI from the get-go. So how do we make sure that the membership has a voice and say in this? And really that discussion was to continue looking at maybe roundtable discussions. I think the committee could be used, and they really volunteered themselves, the committee that I met with, as a diverse group who represents multiple classifications and geographical areas. And now I think has had these initial conversations, they'd be willing to go out and do some outreach to the community. And then ultimately they felt strongly that at the end of the day, needs whatever system we talk about in terms of tournament capture, and then also in terms of seeding, that should go before the legislative council and should be something that's voted on and approved by the membership. Anything else, Ernie, you want to add to that? Anything I'm forgetting? Is that a decent synopsis? Oh, Bethany was on there too. Anything else you want to add to that?
That was excellent, Luke. I don't think there's anything that I can add to, I mean, you touched everything that we talked about.
So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, next steps, I think, are really just that communication piece. If you guys want me to move forward with that committee, kind of doing some outreach and moving forward that way, we can. I really framed this with that group that this was more just information to bring back to you as the board to make some decisions about where we go kind of moving forward. So let me know what you want to do.
Well, thanks, Luke, Ernie, for serving in that capacity. Are you guys good with letting them move forward with this and do some outreach? Everybody good with that? There you go, Luke. All right, thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. 9.0 CHASA staff updates. We'll just kind of go down through them, give them an opportunity to speak if they have anything. Bert?
Hey, sorry, Troy, real quick. I don't know if you saw Ernie's chat early in the meeting about rural schools needing, that we should add something to our agenda to discuss that.
I had responded saying that we discussed it at our last meeting and he was good not.
Cool, sounds good.
And I just forwarded an email, and if we want to have this cited, there's just little comments that come in these communications, and I've asked that group to communicate directly with you and not with me moving forward. I think that it's important based on the Denver Post article and that if their request is to the board, then I need to step back as the commissioner and allow those collaborative efforts, because we did bring that meeting forward. We have responded, and I would like them to communicate directly with you moving forward. And then you can let me know what you would like me to do moving forward. So I think it's in a great place. Let's just make sure that collaborative effort is with the groups that need to, and the commissioner's not in the middle.
So Rhonda, to that point, I guess, that Denver Post article, I think, caught a lot of us by surprise after the fact that we had that meeting. Have they expressed to you at all that they still plan on going forward with what they were talking about before, and that's leaving the association? Or were they satisfied with some of the things that we came up with as recommendations coming out of that meeting and willing to work with the association to move forward?
And I think I reached out to them yesterday, Ernie, because I knew we were going to have this meeting, and I hadn't heard anything from a communication last week that said, hey, we're meeting, we'll get back with you. And I said, great. I want to be able to respond to the board and give them an update. And I received something right before the meeting, which I have responded to, that basically says what I said. They did come back with some additional recommendations, nothing as strongly worded as the first one that we reviewed. So I think we're in a good place, but I would like to step out of this, because when I see a Denver Post article, and I just read an email that says, we thank the board for their willingness to work for us. To me, that feels like you're discounting the efforts of the commissioner that put that meeting together, that invited those members personally. And so if this is a board and small school, rural school effort, I would like it to be directed that way. And then when we have articles, it doesn't look like we met with the board, but the commissioner did something. So I just would like to support you and do what you need me to do as and do what you've directed me to do. But I think it's time for me to step out and let this be communication with the rural schools and the board.
Okay.
Question. So Rhonda, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I guess I've heard from some of those superintendents, and I guess what I'm saying is I know that some of them are still looking at their options, and so be it. Whatever they so choose to do, that's their business, I guess. But I guess what I want to say is I've always felt like you represent us as a board, and you are the one that has the operates and handles the day-to-day operations. I just see it with if you step back, is that us sticking our noses in the weeds of running the organization? I don't want to put the board in a situation where we're running the organization. I don't want to get into that. That's why we hire you.
Absolutely. I feel really good about what we walked away with from that meeting and some immediate and actionable items that are already in place. You guys actually approved one today, which is where the commissioner will do the year-end survey. We'll have roundtables. I will still go on and do all of the things that I put out within a week after that meeting that addressed a lot of those concerns. And then thank you, Ernie, for saying that, because when you read an article like that and you're asked to defend yourself when it was a positive meeting and we did walk away with some really good initiatives moving forward, I just don't want to, I'm like Jeff, I don't want to get caught up in this. I want to be able to look at that meeting, pull out some positives, start moving towards some of the things we can do right now, and then start looking at some things that will take time. And then, as I said in my email, there are some things we are not going to consider as a state association that would micromanage the day-to-day operations and the oversight of the board. So I don't know what that looks like moving forward, other than I want to communicate with you directly on some of those things that we talked about as a board and have responded to them. And then I will share with you the email that I received today. But it's not really about me stepping back and not, responding to some of those things, but I would like those emails to be directed to you. So if an article comes out, we communicated with the board of directors. We're frustrated with the board of directors. Not we're frustrated with the commissioner. We're in this together, and things like that. I mean, it's about perceptions out in the public that the board's willing to work. So who's not willing to work that sits in this chair? And that perception is it's me. And I don't want that in anything that I'm doing, because I've already moved forward with some really good things to address their issues. And I'm not going to defend myself or what we're trying to do to the Denver Post. So I don't know what that means, other than I would like that communication and their frustration and moving forward to be with our board of directors, because that's how they've compartmentalized it. And I'm excited to move forward with the things that we already are. So I hope that answers your question, Jeff.
It does. I appreciate that. The one thing that I appreciated your comment to the Denver Post, well, there was no comment, because we're not going to get into the mudslinging or the bad part of that. We're going to stay up above that fray. So I appreciated your comments in regards to that. Well,
I'm going to tell you, and this is the way that I think about that. I gave them Kurt Wilson, former CHASA board president from Centauri High School. I called Brett Miles from CASE, executive director of the CASE organization and former Holyoke superintendent, and I gave them Rick Munt. And when they asked for my comment, I said, you know what? You need a perspective from the people who do this, who worked with the CHASA and have a balanced story. You don't need it to look like the commissioners going against members of our association. So I declined to comment, and I would like for you to reach out to members of our association. So I receive a text message back, and the text message, are you sure you don't want to give a comment? I said, no, I've reached out to members of our association. I think they can give you a broader picture and a historical perspective than the story that looks like there's someone in our office going up against some of our school members. They'd never reached out to Kurt Wilson, Brett Miles, or to Rick Munt, who were all expecting a call, and then put in their article that I declined to comment. So that's where I'm at, is I just, I don't want to get into this. We don't owe the Denver Post. I said that to my staff. I don't owe them anything. I work for you. I think that meeting ended in a positive light, and I just want to move forward with those positive initiatives. I'm not going to respond to these kind of articles anymore. I'm going to direct members of our association to provide that balanced story. So all three of those gentlemen were willing to speak to the positives of that meeting, and that wasn't the angle of the story. So I think we just need to focus on the positive pieces of it. And if there are things coming, I think it should be addressed directly with the board. So the perception in the membership is this isn't the commissioner and the rural schools, because we've done everything, and we put together the meeting. We put together the meeting. We paid for the lunches. We pay for the breakfasts, and none of that comes out in the articles. And so I just really wanted to stay on the high end, and we just move forward with the positives. This isn't a back and forth. We want our rural schools to be a part of our membership. We're not going to acquiesce to having a subset of a classification under our umbrella, but we're definitely listening, and we want to move forward with just rebuilding some of those relationships and dispelling some of the stereotypes and perceptions. So I'll leave it at that.
So, Ron, I hear that. And I think we have to separate the Denver Post and our rural schools, because I think that's two different things here. And I'm with you 100%. Like the Denver Post, 9 News, whoever else, like the media is the media. And that article, it was slanted. The no comment was the comment to give to that one. But in terms of our rural schools, like I think we're to a point where, look, we heard them. We did assemble with the board of directors. And we're putting things into practice. I mean, these things don't happen overnight. And the reality is that there are going to be some people who they're just not going to be satisfied. They're frustrated for whatever reason, and they can feel that way. It's valid for them. And so, like at the end of the day, if they want to separate and break off into a new association and go through that process, then there's nothing that we can actually do to stop them. And so, but at some point, I don't think you need to withdraw from those talks with our rural schools, because what's being portrayed about them in the Denver Post also may not be completely accurate, because as you mentioned, Rick Munt and everybody else you talked about had a positive experience there. Generally, I've left feeling most people felt that it's a positive experience. And so my concern is there that if we start saying just send it directly to the board, we need rules for that. And really that is, proposed to come to the meeting and have a public comment for 5 minutes. And that doesn't get anything done. But I do think we're at a place where we're putting things into practice. There's not actually a lot of space left to have constant meetings, because we don't meet with the 5A schools, the 4A schools and all that stuff. And so there is at some point, if they want to make changes, we have a legislative council for that. We have committees that they can make proposals for. We have these things in place. We do need to work on our communication in and out.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. But at some point, the rules are there, and they're there to work with them. And so I would say I'd rather you not completely withdraw from those conversations with them, because you are the face. And so you can ignore Denver Post all you want. That's fine. I have no problem with that.
And I'm not saying that I didn't say that I'm ignoring, or I'm still going. I've already put out my initiatives. I'm going on rural school Zooms. I've already put this in writing to them and to the board. What I'm saying is that moving forward, if there's some kind of meeting that needs to be put together, they need to communicate directly with the board president. We don't make this about the commissioner and the rural schools. If this is about our membership and our board, then I know we say, oh, it's not about the article with the Denver Post, but that's the perception that's been put out there in op-eds in some of our rural communities. And that's the direction last week that was put out in the membership prior to another story that came out. But I really think it's important that there's also a protection for the board, but there's also a protection for the perception that this is a rural school commissioner, Rhonda Blanford Green, which was basically said, and there's been conversations around that. And I think that I've already put out what I'm moving forward with, and moving forward, if this is a board and rural school decision, then we need to make that it. It can't be the commissioner, Rhonda Blanford Green, and the rural schools are frustrated. Does that make sense? And then you put out something that says, we appreciate the willingness of the board. And I go back to you, that's not in the Denver Post. It's in the email that I will show you. And I just don't think that's fair. The willingness of a board. And are we the commissioner, not the board? Are we separating me from the board and I'm not willing to work? So I think it's easy to accept some of those things. And I think we did, and we listened. But at some point, this isn't about me and them. This is about how we're moving forward. And I don't get that impression that the perception is being put out there like that. So I'm just being honest around this.
Rhonda, I like Caleb, you know, I support what decisions you make when you want to, you know, interact with the Denver Post, what have you. Here's my one concern, and it's around when we give no comment, then basically that leaves a vacuum where the public, the general public, who maybe didn't understand everything that was going on before, and they're reading about it for the first time in the Denver Post article, now have an opportunity to make whatever conclusion they want to make, where I guess maybe if we could have just highlighted the fact that, hey, we had a productive meeting with the rural schools, and we appreciated the fact that they brought this forward to us, and we think we're in a good place with them, and leave it at that. I think that gives a different story to our public, again, that may include ADs, may include superintendents. I don't know, it's just a concern. So I don't take it as a criticism, please. It's not what I'm trying to do. Just you know, here's my major concern with this. You know, right now we're in a position where when we were in executive session, we were discussing something that had major financial implications for what we're doing as an association. And if we were to lose a lot of these rural schools, as they threatened to do in our meeting, I didn't get the feeling, you know, when we left that was the case, but the Denver Post article maybe made me scratch my head a little bit, made me think, you know, did I misread the room? I don't know what situation we're going to be in as an association if we have 22% of our association members say that they're leaving. You know, we're going to rely on those fees and everything else to help us financially, and we're probably not in a great place financially just because of what we've had to deal with for the last 15 months. So those are my concerns.
Sorry, Ernie, please finish. I didn't know if you were done. Sorry. Okay, well, first of all, for me, I wouldn't want to keep schools because we have to pay our bills. It reminds me how, right, the club teams do. You got your A team, and then so I value the diversity and the ability, and I've said this more than once. I think the strength of our association is the geography, the diversity, the different classifications, how we all operate across this state. I think when you sit in my chair and there's articles that speak to your financial integrity,
All right, well, I think in our previous meeting, that the board was in agreement, this would be a retreat discussion you guys can build upon and continue. Yeah, you're good, you're good. Sorry, everybody. All right, let's get back on task. Shasta staff updates. We'll just run through here if anybody has anything to add. Bert?
I had a great gymnastics meet, 4A, 5A girls gymnastics, really, and regionals the week before. Really felt grateful to the ability for the schools that hosted. And I think we have a congratulations that goes out to one of our board members who's principal of Elizabeth High School. And I think they won their second in a row. So congratulations to the Cardinals. They really performed well. They really did a nice job. This was not an easy year for individual sports, as most of you know. And gymnastics is it's a dangerous sport. And very impressed by the way that the schools stepped up and really took it to heart what we had to do to get a season in.
Thanks, Bert.
Congrats, Brett, and thanks, Bert. Right, Bethany.
I'm here. Thank you. Just been trying to survive volleyball. And I just wanted to publicly thank Richard Hardgrove for his leadership last week during a very tough week for him and his community with regards to COVID and volleyball. So Richard, thank you for modeling what it is to be a leader in CHASA and to support decisions and the larger picture. So thank you.
Jen?
Just want to highlight Unified Bowling. It was amazing. It was great, super exciting. If anybody, Caleb was there. Huge thank you to Caleb for coming out, but Caleb could probably attest to just the energy in there and the environment. And I can only imagine it's going to grow significantly. Those kids are just a class act, whether it was the athletes or the partners. The coaches were so excited to be there. Through regionals, all of our regional hosts did an amazing job. And then Chris, our chair, Chris Ingsmeyer from Littleton, our chair, who's just great and leading that crew. But we've had a good group that's kind of rallied through this season to try to make sure with Special Olympics that we're kind of following suit to the great things they did. And the partnership with Special Olympics is like no other. So it was an awesome event. Very, very exciting.
Great job.
I heard great things about it, and I apologize for not making it. I really wanted to be there, but unfortunately I had an emergency happen. So sorry.
No, it's a hard time to be there, and we totally get that. But we just appreciate everybody. And like I said, I think it's going to get bigger, and we'll get it streamed and get all of those things for next year.
Thank you, Jen, very much. All right, Tom.
Just a comment about a lot of things have taken place relative to championships since we last met as a board. Just a number of different events, and I try to attend them just so I can get a pulse of what the officiating elements are taking place with those events, and maybe it's just my bias, but I thought the efforts by the officials were excellent. That said, there's always an occasion for there to be some frustration with officiating. Just kind of goes with the course of that, and just want to say that a lot of good game management by officials in spite of that, in spite of maybe some poor sportsmanship by fans, but overall, a pretty successful run. So just want to pass that on.
Thanks, Tom. All right, Justin.
Thanks, Troy. Yeah, we had a great, actually really exciting week last week. Busy but exciting week of field hockey and boys soccer. See, Nate's got a little giggle there. I'm sure he's got a nice update in his report. But I think early indications show with field hockey that we may have had our largest crowd, two-day crowd in that event. We had no capacity limitations throughout the week with both field hockey and boys soccer, which was great. So the crowds, I know the student bodies were excited to get back out and see some of those events in person. It really showed last week. I want to thank the Switchbacks Colorado Springs Switchbacks, the professional team down there in the Springs and the USL, as well as Colorado Springs Sports Corporation for their support, bringing us to a new venue for boys soccer state championship in Colorado Springs. We were the first contested event ever in the brand new stadium, and it was a lot of fun. Just perfect venue, perfect size for that event, and so had a great Saturday. Thanks to Nate and the staff there at Inglewood for all their support as well to administer that event. It was just a lot of fun, and I think the spectators, the coaches, and the athletes just really appreciate to be back on the field in front of everybody in such a big event.
All right, thanks, Justin, and thanks, Nate. All right, Adam, anything to add?
Just that we are moving forward with semifinals this week in Season C football. So we've got 5 classifications going, and they'll have semifinals this weekend, and then we'll head down to Pueblo next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday for those championship events. We were able to get a little over 3,000 spectators in each of those games, so it will hopefully look quite different than the 150 people we had in the bleachers back in December. So hoping for large crowds and a good time. And I know the guys down there at CSU Pueblo we partner with are going to put all their efforts into it to make sure it's a great event and it mirrors what a fall championship would look like, so that we give all these kids the best experience possible. So looking forward to that. If you want to come down, let me know. Game times will be Thursday night at 7, and then Friday 2 and 7, Saturday 2 and 7. So come down to any of them if you want to. We'll put you up in the suite, give you some cold pizza, and you can watch some high school football.
I have to make comment and compliment Friends of Football. They've done a great job reaching out to schools this past week, and so just confirmation that they truly are our friends, and so looking forward. Hopefully, we'll be down there. All right, I think that's through CHASA staff. Brad, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, we'll get on to our board reports. Start at large, District 1, 5, and 6. Tarita. I don't know if Tarita's on or not.
I don't see her on.
Okay.
Step away, Troy.
Okay. District 7, 8, and 9. Gabe. Gabe, if you're there, you need to unmute.
I'm here.
There
Sorry.
you go. It's okay.
Yes. So District 7, 8, 9 is actually inaccurate. I think I'm District 2, 3, and 4 now. There was some confusion in some of that. But again, to piggyback along off that, I think there was just a lot of, as reported the last time, it was kind of the same type of stuff. Gratitude for just being able to play, but then a lot of frustrations around COVID protocols and certain variances as opposed to the health. I got quite a bit of calls on that. Some health counties towards the end as things were opening up, not being able to play, or not being able to have fans. Some had fans, some had one parent for home team versus none for the opposing. And some parents were up in roar with that, but that was kind of a continuum of the COVID protocols that we were kind of all faced with. But I would say by and large, a lot of the ADs and coaches were grateful, specifically as I was talking to some of our league, just to be able to play and that try to give kids opportunity. Of course, I heard a lot about transportation issues at various districts, including ours. We didn't have transportation, so I don't think DPS did, and some of the other just various random districts. I think that was a common theme, that how can we get kids to and from in the middle of this pandemic, and we're all trying to figure out how to just have school. So I did answer some of those questions, but it wasn't necessarily from my districts.
And yet it's like, we thank the board.
All right, thanks, Gabe. All right, District 1, Luke.
Yeah, District 1, I mean, we really haven't discussed a whole lot. I think most of the efforts in District 1 have been towards getting ready for legislative council, the CADA outreach. that kind of stuff. So mostly that's the conversations that we've had have been around legislative council. I think on the whole, everything seems to be going good. I know everybody's excited. Well, I don't know if excited is the right word, but happy that they can start letting fans back into games and start generally as things are opening up. I think anticipating that season D is going to look more like things have looked in the past. So all in all, things seem pretty well, and we're moving ahead.
Very well. All right, District 2, Ernie.
Actually got quite a bit. So the first thing, pretty much all the leagues express some gratitude towards the fact that we are into season D and seem to have been able to get through the first few seasons, with about as unscathed as we could have been. We get that there were some playoff games and some other things that have happened where COVID protocols have kept teams out, but by and large, our teams have been able to participate, and we've had that postseason experience. Some disappointment with CDPHE just basically pulling out and wiping their hands clean of everything, but that was more frustration than anything else. There's also some, basically it was a question of me to see what we were seeing in our area and wanted to see if there was anybody else that's seeing the same thing. I actually talked to Marcy Ham about it a little bit on a separate thing yesterday. We are seeing our season D numbers throughout the leagues up here that are quite a bit lower than what we had last year. For example, I'll tell you specifically with Severance, we went from freshman, sophomore to freshman, sophomore, junior. So we had 75 boys and girls out on our track team last year. We have 42 this year. And we have fewer multi-sport athletes that are taking part in both in like baseball track, tennis track, golf track, what have you, where we're seeing a lot of those athletes that used to take part in two. They're doing fewer of that, and we're hearing that a lot of the reason why kids aren't coming out is because they don't want to give up their summer. They either want to concentrate on their club stuff, they want to get a job, they have family trips. So there was some concern about that, and they were wondering if anybody else had seen the same thing. I'm not looking for an answer from anybody, but that was what we were at. Some questions specifically, and I guess Tom, this one might be for you. And so I don't know the veracity of these statements. These are things that questions that came to me. Somebody told me that arbiter that right now, or can continue to be, that officials can change their addresses in arbiter at will. And so when we're using those addresses for payment, I think there was just some concern that, hey, we're using an address. Maybe it was a work address instead of a home address, and it's a little bit further away. So they were just questioning why that can't get locked down. Again, Tom, I don't know if you want to answer. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer right now, unless you have something. But
just to clarify, is it around getting paid more travel?
I think that's what it was. Tom, was the concern was that there are people, and they mentioned things around work addresses being used instead of home addresses, or in some cases when we have young officials who might be like UNC, but they're using their Denver home address as their address to be paid from. So
yeah, just to answer that real quickly, and you can take that back, but we can strategize around if it's certain individuals so that we can have a better way of tracking it, okay? But they can change their profiles, okay? Because that information is really theirs. So we just have to rely on their own ethics in terms of that. So, but we had some issues on the Western Slope with one or two officials, and we paid attention to it and we were able to solve that piece of it.
Okay.
So it's not something that I haven't heard before, but we really can't control the content of their profiles.
That's kind of the way I responded, Tom. It's not any different than ethics of a coach or an AD, right? Following our
Right,
bylaw. And that's
exactly.
the way but
But
again,
if you can give me, if somebody can name a couple that they're suspicious of, then we can track.
okay.
Yep.
That I will pass that on.
Okay.
Another thing, Tom, that's probably yours. This is what came up to me because our assigner actually, and the assigner does a lot of stuff for a lot of the leagues up north, put out and pointed out something that I didn't realize. There's an exception in the bylaws or in the pay scale that is specific to volleyball, where this year with the shortage of officials, we knew that we were going to have, in many cases, when we were doing JV and C along with the varsity, we were only getting 2 officials. And so those 2 officials were working individually with the JV and C, scoring it or officiating it as a 1-person crew, and then coming together to do the varsity piece. And I'm going to read this particular thing here. It's 1 official worked contest for volleyball. A single assigned or single self-assigned official to a contest will receive the posted single game fee. Exception: a volleyball varsity JV solo official will be paid the single rate game fee and a half. Sophomore freshmen shall be paid the single rate game fee. So for our JV kids, our JV games, we're paying them 1.5 times the rate. And for the C team game, we're only paying them the rate, the whatever the negotiated rate was. And so there was a question around why the disparity and why only in volleyball.
I think it came before I think in the officials fees report, there's another paragraph that talks about a solo official. And I think in the past we were paying half the rate at that time. If it was, let me back up. We were paying the full rate if they were assigned with another official and then that official dropped, then they would simply get a 1.5 fee. If they signed up as a single official, then they got the single rate. Okay, I think that was the way it was written before this last iteration of the officials fees. We've since decided that if a single official is working, they get 1.5 times. And this is across the board. But that exception that you're reading in volleyball was there prior to that iteration. And I think we talked about making sure that gets out of there. So I'll look at the fees report. Maybe I'll address that maybe before tomorrow's vote or something, so that maybe there's a discussion about that and we've got a handle on what that should be. But thanks for bringing that to my attention again.
Yes, sir. And I would agree, Tom, that it should be across the board, right? Whether it's C team, JV, whether it's basketball, well, basketball might be hard, but soccer or volleyball, softball, baseball, I think it should be. I mean, you're doing the work of multiple people.
Right. Yeah.
That should be.
And I think we were trying to, in the past, help schools, but in the end, we're still trying to retain officials. So
yes.
So anyway, I'll look at that piece and see where that is, and if we can strike it, we'll just make sure it's out when we vote.
The next thing that was talked about, there seems to be quite a bit of noise around the clock committee and the feeling that meeting needs to be done in person. There was some concern around the inconsistency with some of the votes when we were talking about appeals, and sometimes, you had 8 people voting, sometimes you had 5 people voting because people, I get it. We all have other things that pull us away when we're doing virtual meetings, right? So we're seeing that here where we've lost several of our board members for whatever reason already. you know, one of the things that came out as a specific concern around it, and I don't know if it has to do with the clock meeting needing to be in person or not, but one of the district ADs that I talked to said that there's movement of schools, particularly in football classifications, after the clock committee met, and maybe had even ruled on an appeal, and that appeal was one way, and then later on, in order to balance things, a school was moved after an appeal was denied. So there are some concerns around the way that we're kind of doing business around clock or bypassing clock in that particular thing. Again, I don't know the veracity of those statements. So that what was told to me. So the last one, Rhonda, is one specifically for you, and I'll talk to you about that online, and it has to do with one of the transfer waivers that you ruled on, and how maybe some questions around the interpretation of the bylaw, and they're just looking to get some clarification. So I'll give you a call later on so that you and I can talk about that offline. Okay. That's it.
Okay, District 3, I know Steve Longwell had to step away, so we'll move to District 4. Nate.
All righty, a couple things got brought up today from my various group. Biggest concern, I think, is around league placement, and just that several of our schools are in leagues that are down to 4-person leagues. And I think just wondering what the process is to, you know, when you have a couple schools that just no leagues accept, right? Where they've applied to various leagues and can't seem to find a league that wants them. You know, kind of what is the process there? And just also concerns based that depending on, some schools might have made leagues changes that might now be moot if the 6A football or not football, 6A basketball might have changed how leagues that people would be in. So if that doesn't get approved, that could also cause some issue. Also, I heard some concerns about or questions about spirit tickets. Jen, maybe you can answer this one, is if schools were charged for tickets used or for tickets ordered.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tickets, you had to fill out the form. And so once you filled out the form, we did an automatic. So if you had a roster of 10, you automatically were going to be charged for 20, just based on 2 tickets per athlete. And then you have the opportunity to go in and request up to 56. And once that was turned in, we did let people make some adjustments up until the week prior. But once that week came, we kind of billed you for what the envelopes and what you took. So we didn't allow them to be turned back in.
Okay, so it's not like you're scanning tickets there and you're charging people for who showed up. You're charging people based on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why we had you guys fill out what tickets you wanted, versus us, you know, telling you. And that way, if you wanted the additional, you know, whatever, 36, then you could determine, do each athlete get 3 or 4, or do you have community members, or how you wanted to do that.
Perfect. That answers that question. I'll reach back out to that person. Other thing awesome. I got, you know, because we haven't talked about the football committee report enough. Just from one of my leagues, just a comment that they said at the outreach, it was discussed the idea of maybe letting teams that played in season A go to a contact football camp and then start practice a week back or a week later in season, or in the season in the fall, and that there was just discussion about that, and they wanted to know if anything had been discussed around changing that and allowing teams that played in season A to go to a camp and then start 1 week later. So Adam, that would probably be for you.
Yes, so that's actually something that we have on the agenda for tomorrow at the Legislative Council meeting. We are going to move forward with allowing the summer camp, no restrictions for A versus C. But what we will do is we will add a second camp window called a fall camp, for lack of a better term, where those schools who choose not to go to a summer camp for whatever reason, whether you're A, C, season Z, whatever you played, if you choose a fall camp option that's there for you, you can't do both, but you could do one or the other. If you start the fall camp, you'll start a week early, you'll get a second scrimmage, or you can go to that full summer camp just like normal, Memorial Day through July 31st. So unfortunately, as is the case, when you reach out to some folks to get feedback, even though you say, hey, this is just a hypothetical in between us, they choose that it's their responsibility to share that with multiple people. And so therefore you get that information out there that may or not be accurate. So it's not real comforting when you're trying to get information from people so that you can make good decisions and they feel like they need to share that. But then if you don't do it, you get blamed for not reaching out to people to inform your opinions. So it is what it is. So yes, tomorrow we'll be discussing a fall camp option and a summer camp option. The way it lines out, either option you choose, you will get these same number of days in full pads practice, whether you choose summer or fall camp. I know our football purists won't like the idea of it being called fall camp because that's just what practice is called in the fall, but it is what it is. So that's what we're going to call it. So we'll go over those details tomorrow. We are going to ask everyone to declare which camp they're choosing so that we have record of that. We can also share that then with the school so they know who is a fall camp team. So when you get that second scrimmage, you know who you can reach out to find those scrimmages. Therefore, to make it easier for them, we can know exactly where it is you're trying to go.
Thank you. That gives me that. Yeah, that's just, I can report back on that, and that will obviously make some people happy. So I think that's good news.
Okay, and maybe we're not going to have them go through and disclose what camp they're going to go. Apparently, that's not what we need to do. So we'll just, if you can find somebody to scrimmage, find them.
You're just going to say do either one, basically.
Yep. And then if we find out you've done both, then you'll be on restriction and won't be in the postseason.
There we go.
Hopefully that wouldn't be the case. Hopefully people will do the right thing.
Okay, thanks, Nate. District 5, Caleb.
I don't have any specific feedback from leagues at this point. I know there's a couple compiling, so I'll have more for June. I think right now everybody's focus is on legislative council and keeping heads above water, trying to get out of the school year. So real short from District 5.
Okay, District 6, Michael.
I don't have any update either. Thank you.
District 7, Brett.
Not a lot to report here either. Didn't get any feedback today. Just happy that now we're going outside, have more people there to be able to watch the kids participate.
There you go.
And thank you for the shout out again from Bert. Hey, that's 6 since 2009. I just want to say that.
Job well done.
Move them up.
District 8, Don.
I'll continue the trend. Not much going on. I didn't really hear anything from the leagues in my district. I am interested to see what they bring tomorrow in regards to 6 and 8 man football, though. So we'll see, but nothing else to report here.
Okay, thank you. Looks like Mr. Hargrove's off now, so no report for District 9. 10.2, Casby, Wendy.
I just want to say May is Mental Health Month, so everyone needs to make sure that their mental health is good and all their students' mental health is good. Casby's just working on setting up their conferences for the rest of the year, and then there could be some potential changes to the School Finance Act, which will affect all of us. And then they do have some seminars on people running for school board. So if you guys all need people to run on the school board, you can go to our website and find some information out there. And the superintendent, Lyman joined the superintendent search. So if you know anybody, send them our way.
All right, thanks, Wendy. CDE, Wendy Dunaway.
Nothing really new to report. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, so thank you to all of you. Thank you to all educators, regardless of whether you're a teacher, and thank your teachers. It's been more than one heck of a year plus. So everybody is more resilient than I think we ever thought any of us could be. So anyway, just a thank you, shout out from CDE for that. And really, I mean, it's just the same old thing. We're nearing the end of the school year. And so looking at ways to help support schools and districts with addressing summer school or whatever the unfinished learning or learning loss, whatever people call it these days. Just looking at how we can support districts with that. And moving forward, hopefully we see more of a normal fall.
That's what we're all hoping for. All right, Kata, Nate and Ernie.
So we just got done with our conference. It was totally online. We saw numbers that were actually in line, if not a little bit higher than what we normally see with in person. I will tell you that from my personal point of view, for it being entirely online, it was entirely informative and a well-run conference. So I want to shout out to Leroy Lopez for his leadership and the facilitation of the entire conference, and then Jason Wilkins at Cherry Creek and the rest of the committee that pulled it off, along with Gary Leeper, our executive director, and his employees for making sure that we actually were able to get it done in an effective manner. Nate, anything else?
No, I think it's just, the outreaches have been well received here, and I think, we're all looking forward to being able to get back together in person next year for our conference.
Thank you, gentlemen. Case, Mr. Durbin.
I'll keep this short. I will just say that Brett and I had a conversation regarding the superintendent meeting that we all had the chance and opportunity to attend with the commissioner and board members and the small rural schools. I think that there were some good points made, and I think Rhonda's already hit on those issues. And as far as my replacement, they are in the process of doing that now. And like Rhonda said earlier at the beginning, that process will be wound up by the middle of May. And then my predecessor or my new person will take over for my position. So it's been a pleasure. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure working with you. CASA, Mr. West.
Not much new to report here. Jeff, thank you for your service to CASE and all that you've done through all these years as well. Along the lines of CASE, final plans get in place for the Summer Leadership Conference in person, Beaver Run, Breckenridge. Hopefully getting back to normal this summer. That's always a great conference, and registration is open for that if anybody's interested. The only feedback I got from people on our board meeting that we had last week is that being a board full of rural district principals, that they were very appreciative of the forum that we had with the rural area superintendents and appreciated the discussion, and a lot of positive energy coming back following that meeting. Other than that, I have nothing new to report.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. All right. 11.0, President's speeches, and then we'll do electronic vote. I don't know if we need to waste any time doing rock, paper, scissor, but Caleb, we'll let you go first. Give us a moment, Brad, on his end. We'll be able to have Luke temporarily exit. And
can I bring up the fact that we don't have everyone here, and is this valid to do today?
I have been in communication with the ones that have not to get their votes, because we do announce it tomorrow. So, Brad, are you able to mute or whatever you need to do on your end to eliminate Luke at the moment?
Yes, just 1 second.
Okay. We'll see in a few, Luke. Right, he has exited. Mr. Coates, you are on.
Great. So thank you. First of all, this is terrible campaign strategy, but I can't say enough good things about Luke DeWolf. He has been a great member of this board for as long as I have. And I respect him a great deal in the way he thinks. And so, but that's enough about him. And so I've been reflecting a lot over the last few months and preparing for if I wanted to be considered for this position. And it's, you know, I think just like anybody else, like we've been kind of assessing where we're at. Sometimes wondering how did we get here? What are some of the career choices we made to get to this point and all that. And so I think this last week in particular, I've really been thinking about some of my old teachers, particularly with Teacher Appreciation Week, and just seeing some that have, I'm still connected to a few of my old coaches and band director. And so I've been thinking about some moments that jump out to me pretty quickly and vividly. And there's one in particular from my junior year of football with my coach Part T. We're into practices. It was a pretty abysmal year in terms of win-loss record and pretty tough go. And I think that builds frustration in everybody. I remember one particular day we're running our wind sprints, finish up practice, and you know, I coasted into the line, and so I pulled up a little short, and I'll mince words, but let's just say that Coach Partee, he very vibrantly offered his commentary on how my willingness to come up short was kind of a reflection of the effort of the team in that moment. And so, and he gave me plenty of opportunities to demonstrate maximum effort after that, of course. But that lesson was pretty simple, though, that if you're going to do something, you need to do it right. And so in that case, those were 40-yard sprints. They weren't 38. And so you finish up. And whether people are watching or not, you always have to live with the effort that you give. And on the flip side, while he held us accountable, he always took the chance to express his joy in the great things that we did. And so, yeah, it was about winning football games and all that. And we found some success in the next year. But he's a coach who impacted me a great deal. When I think about how I got to where I am and who I am as an educator, as an athletic director, like we all look back on people who have influenced us, and he is one. And in this particular moment, particularly because of that work around accountability and really what that has done and how I operate with my staff, with students, former students, and just that I believe a great deal in that if you're going to do something, you do it right. You need people around you who are going to call you to that. And so accountability, it is love, it's care, it's trust, and it's faith in other people. And we hold people accountable because we care about them. And people hold us accountable because they care about us. I know that currently this is often forgotten in our current climate, where we are very quick to push people to my side and the other side. So, but I have to remember there are also components to a relationship that make the difference between accountability and gotcha, and that requires trust and shared goals and humility and mutual respect. For as long as I've been on the board, the consistent themes throughout each year have been more accountability and more transparency. I feel we've made improvements in these areas, but our work is to keep getting better. And if you're like me, you're pretty excited about the opportunities that next year brings and that we're finally turning a corner out of COVID. And I expect that every organization is probably gonna have to reckon with some of the lessons that we've learned during COVID and how they apply afterwards. And we're no different. And in reflecting in the last 12, 15 months, we didn't have a playbook to work from. I know there's been a lot of critiques of some of our decisions. Some of them are very specific to COVID, and hopefully we never have to make those decisions again. But there are a lot of things that we need to look at as we move forward. And that's kind of our job, is to always figure out how we can get better. And so if elected as president, and identifying a few things that I think would be priorities to work on, really to kind of hit two to start with. An evaluation process. And I know we talked about that briefly, but I think one of our priorities should be the ongoing evaluation of our commissioner, not just for Rhonda, but for commissioners beyond, and that we need a more thorough and transparent process. I think we heard that in that rural school meeting as well. We need to include some feedback and from not just stakeholders within our membership, but also staff, and just figuring out.
I quit. I do.
Rhonda, you're off mute. And so at this point, it's we need to establish timelines. We need to collect input from the stakeholders. We need a codified process that we can leave behind for all of our successors, including future commissioners. And so annual goals should be revisited more frequently in order to reset focus on identified priorities and to more faithfully reflect and evaluate based on those goals. So I don't support that all things should be public regarding evaluations by any means, because some of that is very personal, and professional growth is a personal process. And so confidentiality does need to remain, but a clear and robust process the board can be held accountable to, will improve trust among the membership. And then another area as a second priority is board communication. We've talked about this at length as well. And so each district operates differently than the other. And this leads to some gaps that I think we need to address within how we communicate and set up our own protocols for how do we communicate before and how do we communicate after. And so whether that's shared templates or whatever the case is, I think it is in our best interest to codify another process for how we solicit feedback from leagues prior to meetings and after the fact. Because from my perspective, our membership would like more clarity and communication from the board, but also clear means for communicating to the board. And so from there, I hope we can continue to foster a collaborative atmosphere among our board, continue to identify areas of improvement as a board. There are some other things we'll need to address, such as individual responsibilities, attending league meetings, and how to better collaborate with our districts and our agencies. And there's plenty of work to be done, and we're here to do it. And so most importantly, I believe that CHSA matters, and I believe that what we do is deeply personal and it's extremely important. And we create the opportunities for kids and students to interact with coaches and teachers in ways similar to the way I interacted with Coach Partee and the way many of you have interacted with several of your coaches. And the work that we do, it's usually public when we don't want it to be, and we end up in the news when we don't want to be. So, but we are a very important cog in this wheel. And so regardless of the results of today's election, I am extremely honored to just even be considered by this body. And I look forward to working with you next year, no matter which capacity. That is all.
Thanks, Caleb. Definitely miss working with you and your humor that you bring too. So, all right, Brad, I'll ask you to have Caleb exit and bring Luke back in, please.
Okay. All right.
All right, Mr. DeWolf, you are on.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you guys, or whoever has hung in there this during the meeting and made it to the end here. I appreciate it. So I guess first and foremost, I just want to talk a little bit about my background. I know a lot of you pretty well, but I think I want to speak to just kind of where I come from and maybe some of the things that I've been a part of, as I think it lends itself to maybe some of the things I can hopefully bring to the table. My mom was an educator for 30 years in a small town on the Western Slope in Colorado. So I kind of grew up around sports. She would keep the books at games, and that was kind of where I grew up, was in gyms. Played sports through high school in Colorado, maybe not the best, but was able to be there and most of the time cheer my teammates on. And then I moved to the Front Range and started coaching on the Front Range in college, mostly at 5A schools, and kind of went through about 3 or 4 years of coaching at big schools. Eventually got a job in Alt, Colorado, on the Eastern Plains, and ended up teaching there for 8 years. My first 5 years at Alt, I was coaching 3 sports. So I just go from one season to the next, to the next, to the next, which was challenging, but great. Enjoyed my time there. Spent a ton of time in rural Colorado, at a lot of different small towns throughout the state, on the Eastern Plains. Eventually got back to the Western Slope and started coaching again at Steamboat, and was hired as a teacher. Probably the last job that I thought I'd ever take was as an athletic director, but ended up doing that. And I've done it for 12 years, through the course of my career here at Steamboat, I've been an AD. And through those 12 years, I think I've gained a lot of perspective about, I think, CHASA in general, my experiences. I've served as a league president for 4 years. I think I've been on just about every committee that CHASA has: hockey, lacrosse, president of skiing committee, soccer. I'm on the football committee right now, basketball. I was on the handbook committee and have been since its inception. 4 years on the legislative council. And my point, I guess, as much as anything, is that I understand CHASA, and I've been a part of this organization for a very long time, and I understand how it works. And during that time, I've also created and been able to foster a lot of relationships with people from all over the state, whether that's urban, metro, rural. And those relationships, I think, are really the key to what I would bring maybe as a president. And that's the ability, I think, to foster and build bridges with people. I think we all can realize and recognize the fact that CHASA needs to heal a little bit, that we need to go through a process after COVID and after everything that we've been through to rebuild some things. And I think I can do that. I think some other things is that I've been in people's shoes. I can understand why people at times feel disillusioned maybe with CHASA and why they feel disconnected. And I think the key to breaking that down is really to develop relationships with people. And I'll talk about that in a second. There's really 3 criteria that I would look at in terms of what to do as president of CHASA. The first is really to support the CHASA board of directors. I think we really need to define who we are and what we are as a board moving forward. The board needs some time to work on itself and define who we are and our role, really our mission, vision, principles, and where we're going to go in the future. I think through that, we'll define and we'll come to some agreement about inevitably what CHASA should look like moving forward if we have those kind of in-depth conversations. And I think they're probably overdue, and it's time to do that. Really, another area of focus is really to support the CHASA staff. I'm not interested in being involved in the day-to-day operations of the association. I do believe that the CHASA staff and the board need to be valuable partners in providing input to one another and general guidance, and really have a real homogeneous relationship where we both see the tremendous value of one another. And I think that's a real key to the success of what we do moving forward. Really, the last thing, and it's a thing I'll touch on the most, is just relationships. And I talked about that earlier, just reinforcing and rebuilding trust with the membership. Really fostering outreach and communication is going to be, I think, a key moving forward, no matter who the president is. I've heard from member schools throughout the last couple of years who feel disenfranchised, who sometimes feel unheard. They often tell me as though they feel like things are happening to them instead of with them. I believe that we have a responsibility to continue to empathetically listen and empower these schools to find solutions to their specific issues. But positive communication and giving schools these voices is really paramount in what we do moving forward. So I think in order to do that, I think the action steps are really to meet those schools where they are at, to sit down with them and hear their message, to not judge or try and pass judgment or find solutions immediately, but just to listen and hear. And I think we've done a lot of that. I think we've moved in a direction that lends itself well to that, but the process is just starting. And I think it's important to understand that that process is going to be ongoing, and it's going to take time and effort and energy from all groups. For things like listening, the member surveys are a great starting point. I think discussions with roundtables, think tanks are all fantastic. We need to continue to foster and find ways to do those kind of things. I think outreach and partnering with Chaska and CADA is imperative. 2 partners who I think can really help us. Communication, I think, really needs to be at the key of that, and that, or the center of that. But also, I really would advocate for the legislative council being the tool for which the membership feels empowered. That means that the CHASA staff and the board of directors are not the sole decider of what happens to this organization. And that really the membership needs to be empowered through the legislative council to make those decisions. That legislative council exists for that purpose, and that's to give our membership voice. And so I think that shift really needs to happen. Those discussions need to happen prior to that. But my energy would be towards making sure that most things move through that legislative council and as a way to empower our membership more and more. I think also we need to make sure that we're telling our story as a board and as an organization. I think you get used to, as coaches, people reporting on you. And I think we need to make sure that we tell our story. We need to get it out there and make sure that we tell our narrative and that people understand what we're all about and the great things that this organization continues to do on all levels. I think other things, integrating systems that allow for more effective communication between really three groups is the three groups that you have to unite and really have to have great communication are the board, the CHASA staff, and the membership. So how do you align those and make sure that those three groups aren't in silos? I think that a lot of times, and what's happened through no fault of anyone, is that sport committees have kind of isolated themselves, not on purpose, again, not anybody's fault, but they've become this avenue that has created a way in which people don't feel connected. And again, an avenue to where people feel like things are happening to them instead of having a voice and being able to have a discourse or a discussion on a certain topic. All of a sudden, a sport committee comes up with something. So I think looking at ways to kind of reinvent those sport committees and how they function is really important within that kind of healing and bridge building process that needs to happen in the future. I think also diversity needs to be a priority as we move forward. We need to continue to advocate for diversity in all of what we do, either as a board, as individual school districts. We need to make sure that we give voice to those that are underrepresented or simply don't have a voice. And that's throughout the organization. And then finally, I would just close, the work above is a natural response. It's not a way to blame or to point fingers at anything that's gone on in the past. It's just a natural relation or a natural response to how the world has changed. And I think any organization that's currently functioning is doing the same things that CHASA is doing, is looking at itself in a way about how can it reinvent itself to meet the needs of what's happening in the world. I would also add that I think the next couple of years are an amazing opportunity to grow the organization and facilitate positive change across the state. I think it's going to take a lot of effort. And I don't think it's one person. I don't think it's a president that can make a difference. Ultimately, it will be all of us on the board. And more than anything else, I think what drives me to do this or to even throw my hat in the ring is that I would get to work with you guys, a group of people for which I have the highest level of respect and admiration for. And I think that we can have some positive change. So either way, I'm here to serve, and I really look forward to whatever role I can fulfill to best help CHASA and to best help you guys. But I appreciate the time, and thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, Brad, why don't you, I guess, go ahead and bring Caleb back in, and then need to have some clarity on how electronic voting is going to happen here. One moment. Okay, should be getting it right now by email.
No, it's going to be in the Zoom.
Oh, in
Zoom
the
poll.
Zoom?
Here it comes.
All right.
You're sending it in the Zoom, right, Brad?
It's in there.
You're sending it in the
Troy, are we just voting or is there any discussion that's going on at all? Just votes?
My plan was to move to voting. All right, so we're gonna, while everything's being tallied, Rhonda will be back here in just a moment to talk about the future meetings.
Okay. Yep, you need to get Tarita's too. All right. Just talking about future meetings, the appreciation dinner will be Tuesday, June 8th at 6 p.m. We wanted to make sure we had the ability to offset some of your expenses for room and board and travel. So we will conclude on the 9th with an in-person meeting that should start at 9:30, try to conclude by noon. The appreciation dinner is a dinner that is sponsored for you and a guest. So if you haven't connected with Kathy, please do so. July NFHS Summer Conference, CHASA Board and Staff, July 3rd. I think that Kathy is still waiting for some of your RSVPs, so please connect with her. And then we are looking at, based upon communication, looking at an in-person board and staff retreat. We're working with Vail, our partners for staff and board retreats, and they're looking at giving us some returning customer deals, but they do have some COVID issues that they're still trying to navigate. And so they are going to get back to Kathy and I. So we should have some answers by the June meeting on whether or not we will host the CHASA board and staff retreat in Vail in August. So it would be in person. We're looking at the dates, and if we're not able to go to Vail, we'll try to look at some alternative sites. So that's it on any of the meetings coming up. And we will start communicating with new board members shortly after the legislative council, so they are on board with calendar dates and how we'll do the first beginnings of the 2021 fall season with new board members. So we have a few new ones coming on.
Rhonda, do we have tentative dates for August?
Well, yes, I do. I always think, do I? And it's like, yeah, I'm actually already in the September calendar, believe it or not. But we are looking at the board retreat we were going to take out just for mindfulness around finances, is maybe get rid of that Thursday night dinner. Look at the board retreat beginning on August 6th from 2 to 5. And then doing Saturday with the spouses brunch, so that we have the ability to kind of, I mean, we don't want to get rid of all of the amenities that go along with this. And then maybe not doing the, the bigger dinner off of the property, and trying to have both of those dinners hosted on site for our retreat, and still maybe having that Saturday dinner not be with our kids, but still having a babysitter or someone available for the students, but making that, or for the kids, and making that more of a spouse guest dinner, as we have done off property, and then concluding with our meeting or breakfast on August 8th. So it would be the 6th, 7th, and 8th. We were looking at Vail. We thought maybe we could get in on July 30th, but I will be presenting at Case. I know many of you are going to be at the Case conference, and that is the week before. So we had to look at a date that wasn't part of your conference on the last week of July. And so that's where we landed with the 5th and 6th. Any questions on those dates? All right. We will update you guys, but Vail really wants this group, and we really think that it's important for us to have an in-person meeting.
And I will so miss not being able to be at the Vail retreat. Some of the things that we got to do 2 years ago and having some fun. Didn't get to do that last year, but I will be in Vail at Vail Racquet Club for 2 nights toward the end of August, as my son and son is getting married up there. And so I'll be thinking of all of you then. Exciting times. Not the cheapest place to have a wedding, but I'm glad I'm the father of the groom and not the bride. So, all right. I don't know, does anybody have a drum to do a drum roll? Two great candidates, two great individuals. Each and every one of you guys on this board are just exceptional people. It's been great to serve alongside with you guys in these abnormal times. I would have never thought myself coming in that we'd have been faced with what we were presented. It's been tough. It's been tough. And I think speak for all of you in knowing that the battles we had and the things we had to deal with in CHSA, we were grounded back home in our schools doing all we could to manage our students, try to keep our schools open, give them every opportunity to participate. And so it's been tough. And I thank each and every one of you for your commitment and the capacities you serve. I hope you continue to serve. But I just heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you. So the poll is in. Mr. Luke DeWolf, you will be our next president.
Thank you. That's completely humbling, and I'll do my best. I appreciate it.
Well, you've got a great team surrounding you, and that's just a great thing.
Did you ask Kathy if she sent them the link for the legislative
yeah.
council tomorrow, and then they'll need to log on?
Has everybody received the link for legislative council tomorrow? Everybody's looking real quick.
Yeah, it would have come directly from Kathy
Let me double-
around maybe about 2 o'clock today. If not, we can resend it for you
I
guys.
will
so you
I
can
will
log in
resend.
tomorrow. So we'll get that sent to you, okay?
Okay, well, we are going to hunker down here for a couple more hours to prepare for legislative council tomorrow.
And just tell them the resolution only had one revision on a typo, but we're good to go.
Yeah,
And Alex and I
yeah.
are okay.
So the resolution that I had read to you all has been printed and given, I guess, given to Alex. So we'll move forward with that resolution. We addressed in executive session. So any other business?
We said we don't need blazers tomorrow.
No blazers tomorrow. No blazers. I was kind of dreading that too. So,
Bring them to volleyball.
That's good because
Bring your blazers to volleyball because we will, as you will assist us in handing out trophies and awards. And Tarita's not on, but we look forward to having Miss Chloe assist us. So if you do come to volleyball, bring your blazers.
No, I'm here and I'll make sure Chloe gets that message too.
all right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing hopefully some of you guys here at the culminating events. And of course, we will see you see tomorrow, but then again on June 8th. Yeah, 8th for our dinner. And then our meeting morning of the 9th. So anything else?
Yes, Troy. I want to thank you for your service and your leadership as our president for the last 2 years. A very difficult time for you to be doing so. So I appreciate you and everything you do. So you brought a level head to everything, and that was really needed this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Ernie.
I concur, Troy. Congratulations, and congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you. All right, well, being no other business, need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Moved by Mr. Durbin, a second.
Yep, seconded.
Okay, second by Ernie. All right, everybody have a great evening. We will see you bright and early tomorrow. Good night.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes.
before you go, this is Tarita. Can can you give me a call? I need to touch base with you about case.